रहे हैं इंशाअल्लाह। थैंक यू। I think this is the 39th International Symposium of King Edward Medical University and second Symposium on Health Reforms. And first time in the history of King Edward Medical University, on occasion of this symposium, we are having 4 simultaneous sessions. One in the main library hall, 2 in second and third lecture theatre, and this is the video conference room. And this session will be chaired, moderated by Dr. Rahil Ahmed Siddiqui. Dr. Rahil is a proud Cambodian. He is my class fellow. Currently, he is the chairman of Chief Minister Inspection Team. And you have got, I think, the legends in this room, Rahil Siddiqui, and then Dr. Kadir Wadaich. He is an eminent gynecologist from UK. And then Dr. Nasir Islam. He is the professor of ENT in US. तो इतने बड़े बड़े लोग किंग एडवर्ड मेडिकल यूनिवर्सिटी में आए हैं. We feel happy and this is the honor of King Edward Medical University. Let us welcome all these legends and welcome you people also. And now I hand over mic to Dr. Rahil Ahmed.
I'll just call one of the students to come on the rostrum for recitation of Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهلك غلاما زكيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي ولد ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا قال كذلك صدق الله العظيم. And remember Maryam in the book, when she went away from her family to a place towards east. So there she screened herself from them. We therefore sent our spirit, angel Jibreel, towards her. He appeared before her in the form of a healthy man. She said, I seek the refuge of the most gracious from you, if you fear God. He said, I am indeed one sent by your Lord, so that I may give you a chaste son. She said, how can I bear a son? No man has ever touched me, nor I am of poor conduct. He said, so it is.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rahil Ahmed. I'm a former student of King Edward Medical College, and I used to be a doctor at some point in time, and then I ran away and joined civil services. There are a number of reasons why I left this profession and ran away from being a professional doctor. The 4 reasons are sitting in this room, starting with your Vice Chancellor, Khalid Masood Gandhi, Nasir Islam Bhatti, Kadir Guraish, and Dr. Said. They didn't left much space for me, so I had to seek greener pastures somewhere else. Having said that, it's always good to come back to this great institution where 30, 40 years ago, we sat like all of you in these very halls and enjoyed life. Didn't study much, but did enjoy life. Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Sir, for giving us all the opportunities, and thank you all the guest speakers. Most of them are my very illustrious class fellows. And I've joined civil services. I've served in at least 3 provinces. Got kicked out of all the 3 provinces, landed back in Punjab. Currently, I'm working for the Chief Minister as Chief Minister, Chairman, Chief Minister Inspection Team. I would also be giving you a brief talk about water and social impact, because I had worked for 3 years on that Devamir Bhasha Dam project. But before I open up this session, I will introduce Saad, who's from 4th year. He will be introducing you the guest speakers who will be coming after us and delivering their lectures. Each guest speaker has been allotted a number of minutes, 15 minutes each, and some have been given 20 minutes. I'll be sitting down there and just keeping a watch on all these speakers so that they don't go beyond their times. Thank you very much, all of you. And
first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Rahil Siddiqui. He's the chairperson of this session today, and he's Chief Minister's Inspection Team's chairman, an extremely skilled professional who has diligently served under various departments of the government in districts of Punjab, Sindh, and tribal areas. He is currently looking after the administrative affairs regarding policy implementation and taking cognizance of the issues of public interest. I am extremely grateful to the guest speakers who have taken out time to come back to the alma mater to share with us the invaluable knowledge and experiences. KEMU takes pride in their alumni who are serving in the country and abroad at extremely esteemed positions of the profession. I would like to add that the credit goes to this esteemed institution that has given them the best education, taught professionalism, and moral values. Our focus in this session today will be on maternal and child health care, which is a core discipline of the specialty of internal medicine. When it comes to Pakistan, unfortunately, our country has a 3rd highest maternal mortality rate. Despite this grim situation, we are expecting improvements by the steps taken under the banner of Millennium Development Goals. Our first speaker today will be Dr. Nasir Bhatti. We are honored to have him here. He is an expert from prestigious institute of Johns Hopkins University. He is a director of Adult Tracheostomy Airway Services. He will shed light on topic water, mother, and children. Sir Nasir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, everyone. Now that the dignitaries have left, thank you, Rahil, for the introduction, and thank you for all you do in the bureaucratic service here in Pakistan. We are very proud of you. So, in 2018, Pakistan was ranked number 1. King Edward, most of the times, I hope not Aga Khan, is ranked number 1, at least in my heart. But in 2018, Pakistan was ranked number 1. But the list after Pakistan included Central African Republic, one of the most war-torn countries in the world, South Sudan, which is very new country, Somalia, and Afghanistan. So these are the top 5. And out of 194 countries listed, Japan was 193. So you wonder what will be this list. The list is 2018's neonatal mortality rate. So I have given a lot of talks. I am not an expert on water or neonatal mortality or child health. I am an otolaryngologist, ENT, head and neck surgeon. My specialty is airway management. My specialty is how residents learn surgery. But I am very, very passionate about this topic, and that's why I'm honored to give you this brief presentation. I have an MD, obviously an MBBS. I did an FRCS in ENT from England. I trained in America as an ENT surgeon. But one of the most important things is one I have highlighted, and that is a master's in public health in health science management from Johns Hopkins University. And what I want you to realize that as doctors, as clinicians, we save one life at a time. As public health experts or policymakers, we save millions of lives at a time. So please consider that as a career option. I am going to talk to you about 2 stories today. Public health people tell stories. I'm going to talk about a couple in a remote village, first in India, and then after partition here in Pakistan. Their names, you have their pictures. The beautiful woman on the right is Hussain Bibi, and this guy is Murad Ali Khan Bhatti. They are my Dada and Dadi. Murad Ali Khan Bhatti was one of the best people I have ever come across, but he was always quiet and almost never laughed. And I used to wonder why. I tell you why. This couple had 10 children. 3 of them survived. And you wonder, why do couples in Pakistan traditionally back then used to have so many kids? Because most of them did not live beyond a few years of life. So that's my passion, and we will share more of that passion and how I turn that passion into action. Most of you, I hope, are senior level students, so I don't need to bore you with definitions, but infant deaths per 1,000 live births. So what is the burden of disease globally? Kadir and other people are experts in this. 2 million people die of diarrheal diseases, diarrhea, caused mostly by contaminated water and contaminated food. And later on in the talk, you will see that almost 500,000 children die in Pakistan every year. 4 billion cases of diarrhea are related with water, contaminated water, obviously. And we all know about climate change. Our beautiful president, the greatest president ever, Donald J. Trump, does not believe in climate change, but it is a reality. And it is a reality for countries like Pakistan, where in 2025, most probably, we will be dry like UAE or Sudan. Floods are the other side of climate change. So drought on one side and floods on the other. So why are we facing this problem, water problem? Because obviously the rise in population, we are slowly having more industry, and even in the last 30 or 40 years, when I come back, every time I see the cities getting bigger and houses everywhere. Then we talk about bacterial contamination, how water gets dirty, and as you know, 80% of our country's population does not have safe drinking water. What are the reasons, like at least in the village that my grandparents lived, or even in the cities, the pipelines of drinking water, the sanitation system, and sewerage lines are all running side by side and cross-contaminating, obviously, all the time. Now I'm going to switch to tale of two countries. Obviously, almost none of you, except the ones sitting in the front, were born, but 1971, these two countries were one country, brotherly countries. I'm talking about Bangladesh and Pakistan. So if you focus on these slides, in 1970, Pakistan's neonatal mortality rate was lower than East Pakistan's neonatal mortality rate. But today, in 2018, last census, Bangladesh are around 25 and we are at 57. So that's a 2.5 times difference. Now I'm going to analyze this a little bit. Bangladesh's under 5-year mortality rate is 32. Pakistan is 75. In Bangladesh, almost 100,000 children die under the age of 5. In Pakistan, 400,000 plus people die. Their population is 160, ours is 188. Their population is decreasing, ours is constantly, explosively increasing. If you go on UNICEF and other websites, you will see some of the reasons why. If you look at availability of something as simple as oral rehydration salt for diarrhea for children, in Bangladesh the percentage is 77, for Pakistan it's 38. Look at some good numbers for Pakistan. Postnatal care for a mother within 2 days of giving birth, 36% in Bangladesh, but 60% in Pakistan. Birth attended by a skilled lady health visitor like personnel, 42 in Bangladesh, but 52 in Pakistan, which is all good. But what I want you to realize that in Pakistan, these numbers in red, where we do not have any sanitation or people take care of their needs openly in the fields and stuff. So that 27 number is very important, because now Bill Gates and other bigger funding agencies look at this problem as WASH, like my title, Water and Sanitation Hygiene. So as you know, there are many causes of infant and neonatal mortality, and I want to focus on diarrhea, which is 11%. But I would submit to you that pneumonia and other things, malnutrition, are all related to mothers and infant children not having safe drinking water and therefore safe food. How did Bangladesh do it? We know that neonatal deaths make almost 60% of under 5 deaths all over the world. Bangladesh is only one of 2 low-income countries where they are exceeding the limits or the threshold set by the World Health Organization. One of only 2 out of 50 or so where they're meeting the previously mentioned millennial development goal. They are reducing their neonatal mortality by 4% consistently every year. But if you look at under 5 mortality reduction, they are doing it at almost 9% a year. How? This is how. They are gathering reliable local data, local evidence. They're repackaging universally available global data like Lancet's Neonatal Initiative. They have high profile like Raheel Siddiqui, like hopefully some stars in the entertainment industry, sports people, championing these ideas. They're focusing on community-based initiatives, and they somehow, I don't know how, but we need to figure out how, they're gathering lots of private and government funding. And their focus has not been on water, but on coverage of key interventions, having a skilled person attending births, because birth-related complications are higher than diarrhea as a cause of neonatal mortality. And most importantly, I don't know if still a taboo to say here in Pakistan, but they have significantly reduced their fertility rate. How should or how can we do it in Pakistan? We need the same formula. We need high-profile champions. We need funding. But most importantly, if 5 people, maybe even 1 person amongst you chooses public health, we need to start gathering real, reliable data. Because I don't think the neonatal mortality is very high in cities like Lahore or Karachi or Islamabad. It's out there, remote areas of Punjab, remote areas of Balochistan, which is skewing our numbers. Coming back to water.
1 minute to 1 minute.
Hello.
15 minutes, doctor? But started at 9:15. So we need, I'll skip some of these. How will we make it better? We make it better by educating people, increasing family income, involving NGOs, involving people like myself. You know, I have water plants in the villages where we provide high quality, tested water with minerals. Bill Gates drank out of this processor, and this water was human waste a couple of minutes ago. So I'm going to take 2 minutes and hopefully be able to play this video.
Over 2.5 billion people have no access to safe sanitation. We asked brilliant engineers to help us solve this problem. And one of those engineers actually has proposed a solution where the waste is valuable.
The Omni processor turns sewer sludge, which is kind of nasty, into clean drinking water, electricity, and ash that is pathogen-free. This is where the sludge enters the machine. It goes up this conveyor belt, is fed into these large tubes we call the dryer. That's where we boil the sludge. And in the boiling process, we separate the water vapor from the solids. The solids are now dry, and we can feed them into the fire. Once we have this very hot fire, we can make high pressure, high temperature steam. And we take that steam and we send it to a steam engine. And the steam engine drives a generator that makes electricity that we use for the processor, and also excess electricity that can be delivered back to the community. The water vapor that's created in the boiling process is run through a cleaning system until we have the cleanest, purest water you can possibly imagine.
The sanitation system as we know it in the developed world cannot work in developing countries. So what we need in developing countries is a very simple system.
The entrepreneur that owns this processor will get paid for the input, the sludge. And that same entrepreneur will get paid for the outputs. the electricity, the water, and the ash.
I am very impressed with this solution we're seeing here. It generates electricity, it generates clean water.
It will grow to every corner of the earth that needs.
So just to conclude, lights on for a second, please. Being number one on that list is not a matter of pride for me. And I urge all of us, we can, so as you all know that if we set goals, if I want to score a better score in CSS exam compared to Kadir Wadaich, then that's my goal. And once we have a goal and then we have a strategy, most of us individually have achieved it. But let's achieve it for this country, our generations, and in memory of my grandparents. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasser. Dr. Saab, you have made my life pretty easy because when I'll be ending my discourse, I think we need to put this small movie back again. So there are two questions. There's no shortage of water on the blue planet. Is it true or false? You can guess. We believe in Earth's infinite generosity. Is it true or false? It could be true, it could be false also, both ways. It depends, because water is the face of climate and therefore climate change. So there could be excess of water in terms of flooding, and there could be drought and absolutely dry weather. I don't think any one of you have read this poem, because none of you have into English literature. I was for a short while, and that is why I've chosen ST College's poem. Water, water, everywhere, not a drop to drink. This is a story about a ship being shipwrecked somewhere in the South Poles, and they had water everywhere, but it was all frozen and it was all salty, and they all died of thirst. So this is the situation where the world is heading for, and Pakistan is leading the way, and that is a matter of concern for all of us. The situation is there's too much water and then there's too little water. That captures the trajectory of the overall crisis. You must have heard, if you're good in English, हमारे ज़माने में सर काठे बड़े होते थे. Born in a China shop. ये cliché है, but this is what I had witnessed in 2010, the floods. Lekin this is not the end of the story. Anybody could guess ये किस जगह की तस्वीर है और ये कौन सा water channel है? Any wild guess? ये कौन सा water channel है? Any wild guesses?
Sindh River.
This is River Sindh. Good, Nasser. You got 10 out of 10. Sindh, the mighty Indus. ये जनवरी में इसके ये हालात होते हैं. And then I witnessed drought while I was political agent in one of the remote areas of Balochistan. So the climate keep changes, the weather keep changes, the pendulum swings from too much water to too little water. And there's some very hard facts about water also. 97% of the water that is found on earth is salty. You cannot use it. That leaves only 3% of the water in this world which we can use as the sweet water. Out of those 3%, 2% is trapped in glaciers in South and North Pole. They're all frozen, we cannot use it. That leaves only 1% of water in this world that is usable, both for drinking, for sustaining life, for agriculture, and for every activities that we can think about it. So, जब पानी 1% हमारे पास है इस दुनिया में, so we have to be very, very prudent. How are we going to use this water? मैं थोड़ा सा पीछे लेता हूँ. 94% of the water in Pakistan is used for agriculture. 6% is used for municipal and industrial purposes. लेकिन जब आप एक कॉफी का कप पीते हैं तो कॉफी ग्रो करने के लिए till it becomes a cup of coffee you need 160 liters of water. इसी तरह I've given you the list. This is virtual water. This is how much water you need to sustain life. अच्छा, lately we've talked about climate change. Nasir Islam ने भी जिक्र किया climate change. In the last few decades, 0.74 Celsius temperature been raised on an average around the world. 0.74 Celsius feel भी नहीं होता. लेकिन ये जो feel उस वक्त होता है when these words become very significant. And this is flood, drought, hurricane, and glacier outburst phenomena. 2010 super flood. ये आप लोगों की लाइफ में आया था. हमारी लाइफ में भी सुपर फ्लड एक ही बार आया. Last time it was 1954 in Pakistan. उससे पहले 1940s में एक आया था. 2000 deaths. But look at the economic losses that we suffered. 6 billion. और ये जब सुपर फ्लड आ रहा था, I was trapped in Chagas while working for the Ami Bhasha Dam projects. I was marooned there for about good over a month, and then I had to do a few mountaineering expeditions and escape finally. और वो it was a very difficult expedition के बर्फ पर चल के दूसरी साइड पर लेकर के आए. But it was very difficult times. I thought that the tragedy has occurred with me because I was cut off from the rest of the world, had absolutely no connection. Despite all the rains, there was very little water that we can drink of till we reached the height where there was snow line और glaciers से माँ का पानी ले रहे थे. So it was very tough time. बाद में पता लगा कि the country has gone, half the country has been submerged in the water. लेकिन मजे की बात ये है, still have time, कि जब मैंने वहाँ से रिंग की चिल्ला से कि the flood is coming, nobody believed me in this Wapda house. They thought कि मैं तो I'm not an engineer. Only an engineer could know about it. I'm a journalist. And yet I'm crying hoarse कि ये flood आ रहा है. It could be a disaster. And nobody was sitting in Lahore and Islamabad was realizing the magnitude of this flood. Till Chairman Wapda got in touch with me from Moscow and I said, okay, we're heading towards a disaster and maybe in a couple of hours I would not be able to communicate with you. And that is how we were hit by this super flood. अच्छा, options क्या है हमारे पास? Manage water or solve the problem. Since we are not being able to solve the problem, it's a global problem also, it's a national problem also. और हमारे region में we have got 2 or 3 worst climate polluters in the world, heading by China, India and Iran. So हम problem to solve नहीं कर सकते, but we can manage problem the way we have just shown you in that clips. And this is what Nasir was also talking about. 1960, 1950s, we were a water surplus country. We had surplus water. But look at the growth of population and look at the resources of water has gone down. So by 1990s, mid-90s, we've crossed the levels and we are becoming water stressed. Our population अगर इसी तरह explode करती रही और water availability कम होती रही, so in 2020 or 2025, 2030, we could be Sudan. We're heading towards those crises. What went wrong? And why did it went wrong? 1960 Indus Basin Treaty. We sold 3 of our western rivers pretty cheap. हमने मुफ्त में इंडिया को दे दिया. There was an authoritarian government here, and they were the technocrats who were looking for something else. They never thought about it. There were low riparian rights that has to be enshrined in this treaty. Low riparian rights हमने अपने तो छोड़ दिया. India ने for the 3 rivers that was exclusively given to us, उन्होंने upper riparian rights रखे हुए. And that is why you heard about this Baglyar Dam and all those controversies. And very soon, River Chenab and Jhelum would also be diverted because they had some upper riparian rights. Position ये है कि we can't go to International Court of Justice. We can't undo the treaty unilaterally, and we are in a very, very tight corner. We have heard कि हाकड़ा रिवर होता था 5000 years BC. It just vanished. और उसके साथ एक civilization चल रही है, archaeologists आकर उसको excavate कर रहे हैं. In our lifetimes, we have seen 2 rivers going dead. One is Ravi. Ravi is dead and has become a gutter. Number 2 is River Satluj. It has gone dry. Never in our lives are we going to see fresh water in those two. और उसके जो ecological effects अब आ रहे हैं, it's tremendous. In city of Bahawalpur, oh my God, I have to Constitution of Pakistan, 1973. Article 161, clause 2, जिसकी वजह से कालाबाग डैम नहीं बन सकता, unless we go and redo it. क्योंकि जो हाइड्रो पावर स्टेशन जिधर बनेगा डैम में, पैसा उस प्रोविंस को मिलेगा, which means कालाबाग डैम बनेगा तो पैसा सिर्फ पंजाब को मिलेगा. Anyway, we didn't have a national water policy, and we reached a crisis in 2018. The Chief Justice of Pakistan took a suo motu notice, and he started this dam fund. Dam if you donate, dam if you don't. Problems बढ़ रहे हैं, leadership problems, crisis रहे हैं. We don't have long-term policies. Dam हमने आज तक नहीं बनाया कोई. Last time 1974 में बना था, जो commission हुआ था Tabela Dam. Turf wars and the priorities, national water policy. I'll just skip. Reduction in the availability of surface water. Dams हमारे 2 बड़े हैं. They're silting up. Mangla raising आया, हमने उसको raise किया. Again it had silted up. Over-exploitation of groundwater resources. Contamination of river due to disposal of industrial waste and household waste. Floods and droughts की मैंने बात कर ली है. And there is no pricing of water in this country, which is absolutely. Kadir Wadaj is coming from abroad, so is Nasir Islam, so are you. वहाँ पानी के टैप जब आप खोलते हैं, तो हम इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के बिल से डरते रहते हैं, वहाँ ये पानी के बिल से डरते रहते हैं. In Pakistan, nobody cares about it. हम जो ड्रिंकिंग वाटर होता है उससे अपनी गाड़ियाँ धो रहे होते हैं. जो बारिश का पानी होता है वो हम गटर में डाल रहे हैं. We are not harvesting the water also. And that is why the clippings that he showed is absolutely relevant to the crisis that we have. Things to do is regulatory controls होने चाहिए. Public education. Create awareness कि भाई पानी में एक resource है. अल्लाह मियाँ ने ऐसे मुफ्त में नहीं दे दिया. You have to be more prudent about it and think about it. And there should be more research and learning lessons to be done. The amount of moisture on the earth has not changed. The water the dinosaurs drank millions of years ago is the same water, the same availability. But will there be enough water for a crowded world? That is all the young minds to think about. And I leave with this question mark, and I'll just say thank you for giving me a patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Vara Naeem and I'm a student from 4th year MBBS here at Kangaroo Medical University. And it is an immense pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker of the hashtag. Our next speaker will be Dr. Fareed Zafar, who is currently serving as professor in obstetrics and gynecology. He also happens to be the president of Pakistan Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. Fareed Zafar will be speaking on maternal health and contraceptive prevalence. Dr. Fareed Zafar, we're very honored to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fareed Zafar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Rahil Saab, Nasir Saab, Kadir Saab. I will take a little bit time, 1 minute if you can give me extra about water session. You know, when I went through these talks and what I actually suffered from 2010 floods, I would like to relate the story. I was in Manchester and I saw the news, the massive floods in Pakistan. I booked my ticket and next day I flew back to Pakistan and I arranged a team of Society of Gynae and Obs of Pakistan, and I drove from Lahore, and because I belong to Multan, I went to Mahmood Court and Muzaffargarh, and I spent 2 weeks in those floods and there was massive water. After 2 weeks, I realized that I was not well and I drove back to Multan to my house. and I checked my fever, it was 104. And then since my wife and family was in Lahore, so I could not drive. I booked a seat and I came back to Lahore. And for 4 weeks I was in hospital, and fever was 102 and 104, and nobody could diagnose what I was going through. And after 4 to 6 weeks, every medicine was tried on me. I was diagnosed as dengue fever. So I was the first 3-4 people in Pakistan who got dengue. And it started from the floods of 2010. And then, it went on like that. And this year also there was hike and, the spike here of dengue. As a farmer and as a grower, I would like to share another thing. In 1980s, the water level which was 100 feet in our lands, it is now 700 feet. And it is very difficult to water the lands, and there's a large piece of land in some of the areas where there's no water and they have become totally barren. And then you cannot grow anything. And we started drip irrigation. And the farmers who were absent, who are into service and working in, like myself, I'm in service also. And if you have a land, you are in government service. The pipes for drip irrigation, 80% of them were stolen from all the lands of all landlords who were not living there. And so that was also not feasible. So let's start. I'm a gynecologist and test tube baby specialist, and we have maintained a registry of maternal mortality. So my talk is, it was amazing. Mr. Nasir Bhatti is, I've heard he's an ENT specialist, but his talk was on water and on maternal and neonatal health. Contraception and women health. According to WHO, absence of disease, it is physical, mental, and social well-being, which we do not. The human being has to be, healthy if all these parameters are met with. You can see that's how a woman should look like. As a gynecologist, I want that all of them look like this. I'm lucky my wife is beautiful. And this woman is happy. She doesn't know what has happened to her. Maybe she's not aware, but still, she should not look like this. She should not have these wrinkles. Health issues from womb to tomb. Motherhood and childhood, anemia and pregnancy, gender inequality, and violence against women. There are different phases of life. When a child is an infant, there's sex selection problems. Parents want to have a son, and then discrimination on nutrition and school. And when she grows, becomes adolescent, then there are other problems, early childbearing, abortion, some infections, and another problem recently which has become, alarmingly high. A large number of female students in the college and schools are becoming addicted to various things, and we are fighting as a society of obs and gynae, we are fighting against that also. Then, there are other issues. One thing is very interesting. In Pakistan, most of especially lower class, they take use termination as, as a contraceptive method. They do not use the proper methods which are available, and they are using termination as the method of contraception. Then as the woman grows, cancers and osteoarthritis and various other problems. It requires dedication. Whatever we are doing, the previous speakers, they mentioned about the goals, you require dedication, and people from the top needs leadership, and people from the top have to work. If they work only, then they will set a goal, then mentoring and become role model, and only then people will follow. Unintended pregnancy, you can see that Asia is still very high. This is per 1,000 births. Pakistan comes in this. Then about preterm, you can see the here adolescent. Blue is the adolescent pregnancy, and this orange is between 20 and 34. And you can see in adolescent pregnancy there's low birth weight, and preterm chances are higher, and adverse outcome is 42% as compared to 31%. In Pakistan, the PDHS survey says that 1% are pregnant at the age of 15. It suddenly rises at the age of 19. 19% of the young girls are pregnant. And between this 15 and 19, 8%, they produce children in the age, and 6% children are alive. So these are the problems, of childhood pregnancy and early pregnancy at early age. 7% report the death of the child in adolescent pregnancy, and 2% report beyond the 20 years of age, and 16% subjected to domestic abuse, and after the age of 28% to the domestic. Improve maternal health. This is amazing what Pakistan has done. I mean, I am really very happy and pleased to announce that last year it was 178 per 100,000, and this year it is 140 per 100,000. In this single 1 year, Pakistan has achieved this. This was MDG goal and had to be achieved in 2012. But in these 6 years, Pakistan has achieved 140. Still, it is not bad. Last year, India was 174 and Pakistan was 178. This year, Pakistan is 140 and India is 148. So regarding MMR, we are better now than our neighbors. Proportion of females with antenatal care, MDGs had to achieve by 2012 100%, but up to 2018 we have 86% we have achieved, which is still not bad. And I think if we keep on working like that, things will improve a lot. This thing, I'm not very happy with it. Contraceptive prevalence, 55% 2012 we had to achieve, and in 2016 we were 35, and now we have gone 34. There are PDHS survey says there's one reason is that 15% of the men have immigrated abroad and their wives are living here, and that is not included in the data. They are not using contraception, and plus because WHO is not giving the contraceptive IUCDs and devices, so government has to buy it, and that's why the problem is increasing now. This I've already touched. Then the targets, SDG, we aim to 70 per 100,000. This is the global MMR, which is the target is by 2030. In 2015 it was 216. In 2017 it was 211. In 2018 it was 198, and you can see in 19, just give me 1 minute more, I spoke on water actually. So in 1990, it was more than 400, but now we have gone up to 140. Challenges in Pakistan, population explosion, illiteracy, and poverty. SDG says that all these goals have to be met simultaneously, and compliance is very bad. These patients, they come to us and they go back, and follow-up is very, very difficult, and then they come after a year that we are not happy with it and please remove this device. And so that's why we are having the failure, and we are trying to go to these people, to their villages, to improve our CPR rate. This thing is depressing. Pakistan in SDGs is, as compared to the level, is still very low. So SDGs is just not maternal mortality, there are so many other things. So we have to pull up our socks and we have to improve the things. Let's skip these 2 slides. This thing is very interesting. More than 50% of the maternal mortality is taking place in these 6 countries. So if you work in these 6 countries, the maternal mortality, which is at the moment 198, will come down less than 100. These are the problems which women are facing. Let's get this. Women require transition. Yes, 1 or 2 slides. I will just share the data which our hospitals are having. LGH was 35% in 2018, now it is 32, it is less. And Lady Wellington was 40%, in 2019 it is 30%. Lady HSN Hospital was 47% last year, this time it is 45%. Services has done better, it was 61, now it is 70%. Gangaram was 38% last year, it is 35%. Nishtar was 46, it is 45. Jinnah Hospital was 40%, it is 35. Dera Ghazi Khan was 29%, it is 22. And Rahim Yar Khan was 9%, it is 8.8 now. Bahawalpur was 35, now it is 34. So this is the problem which we are facing. This is the chart that Society of Gynae has developed for contraception. And at the end, I would like to give one suggestion. When you travel all over the Pakistan, the problem lies in Punjab. It is not in KPK, it is not in Sindh, it is not in Balochistan. We have traveled many times from Quetta to far-flung areas. You hardly find an individual over there. And in the data it says this thing is dead because of Balochistan, because of KPK. There are thousands of miles from Abbottabad to Gilgit, there is no population at all. You have to relocate your population. It's just concentrated in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. So problem, we have to work in Punjab more, and government has planned 12 cities along Ravi. I think cities should be planned more in Balochistan and in towards northern areas where the water problem is not there. You can have your own electricity, you can have your water source, and the load shedding is not a problem over there. So these are the things we have to look for, and the work which we have to do is more in Punjab, and let's join hands together, and we have to fight this menace of overpopulated areas, and we have to control maternal health. 3 indicators: education, standard of living, and maternal health. If you achieve these, you will come into the developed countries. And I'm very grateful to King Edward's and the alumni who have invited me over for a talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fareed. I'm sure your talk on maternal mortality and contraceptive prevalence, or lack thereof, was very insightful for the audience. Our next speaker who I'd like to invite to the podium would be Dr. Kadir Viraj. Dr. Kadir Viraj is currently serving as consultant obstetrics and gynecology at St. Mary's Hospital, Isle of Wight, UK. Dr. Kadir will be speaking on maternal mortality while shedding some light particularly on the reduction of maternal mortality. Dr. Kadir, we're very honored to have you here, and we're very thankful that you've taken out time from your busy schedule to be here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kadir Viraj.
One of the pioneers to introduce dengue in this country. We are very thankful to you, Dr.
It's great to be back in this hall. I've been a student here. My name is Kadir Viraj. As Rahil has just said, we were class fellows here. I'm currently working as a consultant in obstetrics and gynecology in UK. And I'll be, we have touched upon this subject. Dr. Fareed has also talked about it. It's mainly maternal mortality, and my focus and how to reduce it. I think I don't need to emphasize that how important it is. Maternal mortality. It is not just one person you are dealing with. You are dealing with 2. As this picture shows, the mom and the child. It's not just the child, it's the whole family which is devastated when a mother dies. So in my talk, I'll be briefly giving you a background of maternal mortality, but mainly focusing on how we can make efforts to reduce it. And in this scenario, I'll be talking about the role of obstetric life-saving skills and drills. Because the overall subject is too large to be covered in a talk. And I'll touch on the subject of sepsis, as well as an awareness about. Right. So, as all of you know, maternal mortality ratio is defined by World Health Organization as the number of maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. And the causes of deaths could be direct, which is because of pregnancy, the state of pregnancy itself, like hemorrhage, eclampsia, or indirect causes, which is a condition which is already existing or becomes worse because of the presence of pregnancy. The time is up. So there is the map of this world. Now we have talked about maternal mortality and its extent in the world. The red areas indicate where the maternal mortality is very high. And that's the Central African areas. The brown areas where Pakistan stands is the moderate, and green are good ones. The World Health Organization estimates that over just under 300,000 women die of preventable causes in pregnancy every year. And that comes to over 800 women dying needlessly every day. In Central African countries, the ratio is over 1,000, 13 to 1,500 in some parts of those. Pakistan's figure have been, I've looked at a great search date, and as Dr. Sab said, it is 178, and that's what's currently being quoted. However, when yesterday I was in Lady Wellington Hospital, and our community medicine professor quoted a figure which is much higher. So I do realize that figure work and the exact calculation is probably a little bit problematic. However, even with that, we can see that historically, Pakistan has made great progress. Whereas 30 years ago, it was over 450, and in about 30 years, it has dropped to around 170 or 150. Now, a lot has been done, but clearly more needs to be done. When you talk about reducing maternal mortality, you can do the interventions across a range of the spectrum of pregnancy. Okay. My concentration today would be about intrapartum and the postpartum care, immediate postpartum care, and what are the things that we can do to help reduce the mortality. One of the things that has been proven in many parts of the world to be very effective is the obstetric life-saving skills and drills. What they do is they reduce the risk in that area. Now, risk is prevalent, is present in all situations in life. You want to ride a bike, a motorbike is risky in this scenario. You can see 6 people on a bike, mom, children, so it's clearly a high-risk situation. You can still do the same job, but you can make it much safer with the right equipment and with the right approach. Obstetric emergency, like many other emergencies, is a very intense and fast-moving situation. Imagine a postpartum hemorrhage. As students, you may have been to the maternity wards and you may have seen. You can lose liters of blood within minutes. So it's important that the staff at that time is well tuned to treat that, because otherwise the situational awareness is well proven and people tend to develop a tunnel vision. They actually ignore what's happening. And here is a video which shows if you are very much focused on just one thing, what can happen. It's the typical example of tunnel vision. Ouch. So that was just to show what can happen if you develop that tunnel vision and how many mistakes you can make. Their mistakes are inevitable in this situation. So worldwide, several methods have been developed to see how to teach people how to deal with these situations. Now there is a range of that, including managing medical obstetrics, emergency and trauma, meant for very high-risk situation, which needs very well-equipped laboratories, to also, which I believe Pakistan has a chapter, or prompt courses, which are more practical and are low resource and can be rolled out to the low resource areas. Now these drills are not academic lecture based, they are scenario based, and you enact it. So a group of people enact it, the other watch it, and that's how they learn. It's done in a local environment, in a local scenario. They are low resource, and they are meant to be for everyone who's involved in the care of those women. And that includes midwife, medical officers, consultants, and perhaps particularly consultants, because the more senior you are, at times you are more removed from the everyday emergency situations. And I think it's important for that level of staff to be involved in this care. Now they are non-judgmental. There's no pass and fail. Like I said, you just enact, observe, and then repeatedly doing those in a more real life-like scenarios so that it becomes spontaneous. And you're actually facing a situation, you don't have to think a lot, you can just act on it. If I show you a video, it's a short video to give you an idea how it works. An idea how these drills work. So this is scenario, it's enacted. There's a situation of postpartum hemorrhage and how the team comes in and deals with it.
Training provides a framework for management of PPH based on national guidance and evidence. We include algorithms that help to make management decisions straightforward for all members of the multi-professional team.
Classroom teaching provide a forum to discuss key learning points such as accurate measurement of blood loss, underestimation of friction, and delays in administration of blood loss, particularly for women globally.
Scenarios are used to reinforce these learning principles in a clinical setting. The emergency is clearly stated and senior members of the multi-professional team are involved early on.
Hi, this is Kathy. She had a delivery about half an hour ago. On that cancer centre, she's having a PPH.
Okay. Great. Shall we get the PPH box? Okay. Kathy, hi, I'm Chris.
Internal observation.
So that's the whole idea. The idea is that you enact the scenario and then it ingrains, you do it repeatedly and you become so used to it, it becomes spontaneous. It becomes part of your work culture. Now a couple of other things that I wanted to touch upon. One of them is sepsis. Sepsis remains a very major killer, particularly in scenarios like third world countries, developing countries. The key to dealing with sepsis is prompt diagnosis and prompt treatment. And that saves lives. In UK, a sepsis bundle or something called Sepsis 6 has been developed, which has shown to halve the deaths because of sepsis. And it's very successful and it's rolled out to all the units there. And I think it's something worth considering here. What it takes is that as soon as there is a diagnosis or a strong suspicion of sepsis, you have to start treatment and that starts with oxygen, full flow oxygen, take blood cultures, but you don't wait for the results to come back, you start IV antibiotics treatment. And it is advised that local sensitivities should be checked, but in UK, it's usually piperacillin, clindamycin, and gentamicin, triple antibiotics. Fluid is of course essential, and then you monitor it with the lactates and urine output. And what's important is, in these scenarios, and I think as it is there in this country too, is to the involvement of the senior staff. It's essential that they attend, and that includes obstetrics as well as the anesthetists, and if the physicians of any particular specialties are needed, they should be. And I know these are difficult things here because every environment is different and every scenario is different. But at least that's what it should be aimed at. Local protocols can be developed as a prompt and they can be put in their case notes so that people are reminded of what needs to be done. One of the other things I'm very passionate about, and I think we must be all aware of, is the role of psychiatric illnesses in pregnancy. It's the silent killer, it's the invisible killer. It still remains the number one indirect leading cause of death in women, pregnant women in UK. There is no reason to believe that the incidence is any less in this country, but it's a very ignored subject. Psychiatric illnesses, or spectrum of that illnesses, is pretty common. If you look at this slide, it shows how common it is in women, including just feeling depressed in about half the women, to becoming suicidal and committing suicide. And this is a condition which can last up to 1 year after the delivery. So the late postnatal period is extremely important. What's important is to raise awareness about it. It's too short a period for me to go into any details. But the essential thing is to be aware of it, and for all healthcare professionals to ask the question when they see the woman in pregnancy about her mental well-being, and be able to raise concerns and refer if that's required at that stage. Remember, most of those conditions are treatable. Now, what is my take-home message from this? Reducing maternal mortality of everyone who is involved in the care of women, it is everyone's opportunity and it's everyone's responsibility. You cannot absolve yourself of the responsibility if you are in any way related to looking after a woman in pregnancy. Human errors are inevitable. You need to put in place procedures where you can reduce that. You can't probably remove them 100%, but you can reduce that. And one of the ways is the obstetric skills and drills. Sepsis is a killer, should be treated very promptly, and to raise awareness about the invisible killer, which is psychiatric diseases. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kadeem. We'll be now moving on to a discussion on a very imminent issue in Pakistan, that of BHUs. There's a lot of talk within the medical community regarding the effectiveness of BHUs and what can be done to make them better. There are people who talk about privatization, and there are others who are against the privatization of BHUs. So it will be an immense pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker who will be speaking in favor of BHUs. This happens to be none other than Dr. Tariq Gohar. Dr. Tariq is currently serving as senior partner at Hugginsco Research in Colwyn, and his accomplishments in this regard are a source of inspiration for all of us. Sir, we're very grateful for your presence today, and have no doubt that your words would be a source of immense pleasure and insight for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tariq Gohar.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this. It does feel strange to stand on this side of the podium. I remember myself sitting right on the back benches of this place. It was meant to be a debate, but my opposite member has not been able to make it. So I think I've got a bit of a walkover. I will probably try to take some of his arguments, and I think the debate is slightly erroneous. I personally don't believe in privatization or privatization in the traditional sense of health, education, public transport. I think they should remain in public sector. So the privatization which I am going to be arguing for is privatization which is in a very controlled environment, which is perhaps unique to NHS in Britain. So my aim of this talk really is to give just a brief overview of the NHS. Mostly I will talk about the primary care part of it, and I will touch briefly upon the cost effectiveness of the healthcare, and then perhaps take some of the things from that primary care in the UK, which I think can be implemented with some kind of variations in Pakistan as well. Now, NHS was established in 1948, just after World War II, it was perhaps the first truly universal healthcare system in the world. It was based on three main principles. It was meant to provide a good quality healthcare to everyone without exception, and it was meant to be based on clinical need and not on person's ability to pay. I would probably add a little bit to that as well, not on just patient's desires or patient's wants. It has to be a clinical need, which is usually decided by the clinicians. And it has to be free at the point of delivery. Now, NHS has gone through lots of changes in the last 70 years. I have seen quite a few of them myself. But this principle has remained true throughout that, and they really are very passionate about it. 99% of the NHS is funded by taxes. Only about 1% is funded by the patient. Now, NHS is a truly huge organization. It is the biggest employer in Britain. It is the 5th biggest employer in the whole world. It employs 1.7 million people. And this makes it a very complex organization. This is just a little chart, and I don't even dream of trying to explain all that to you. I would like you to concentrate only this little organization, not very little, but in a red circle. It's called Clinical Commissioning Groups. Short for that is CCGs, and these are the people who have got the main part of the budget which they commission on behalf of the patients. And these CCGs are about more than 200. They cover roughly size of a district in Pakistan, and they decide about how to commission health services in that particular locality. They fund primary care, myself that is, and commission services from hospitals, mental health, community services, ambulance services, emergency services, and quite a few others. Now, GP fits into this. I think they have quite a pivotal role, because they are the main channel of providing any form of healthcare in Britain. They are the linchpin. GPs are strange kind of breed of people. They are probably the only self-employed people in NHS doctors. They work usually in group practices out of the buildings which can be owned by them, or it can be a third party, or sometimes they are owned by the NHS. They select and basically hire and fire their own staff, which can include doctors, nurses, and other staff. They run it like a business because they haven't got any salary. They basically have a profit share. So from that point of view, it is like a private business. Every person in UK needs a GP to access any form of healthcare. They have a choice of GPs in that area. It is a relatively limited choice, but they do have a choice. All referrals to the secondary care have to be done by the GP and few other health-related organizations. They also coordinate multidisciplinary teams in the area. Another interesting thing about GPs is that they hold the most complete electronic patient record, right from the day they are born till the day they die. Some GPs train other GPs and medical students as well, or surgery work. Now, their source of income mainly is from the capitation fee to keep patients on their list. Another part of income can be from the premises where it is running from. If GPs own those premises, then they get a handsome rent to run those premises up to a certain required standard. And GPs provide basically most services through their core contract with the NHS. They can develop services further, and then those services can be negotiated again with the commissioning bodies if it is available on the NHS. If it is not available on the NHS, then they can be given to the public directly and privately. Some like cosmetic kind of procedures and that sort of thing, or certain procedures which are not quite cost effective. We are accountable to various organizations. CCG is one of them. We provide us most of the source of funding. They give us a yearly peer review, and then there is a regular inspection by an organization called CQC, Care Quality Commission. And there is a robust complaint management system, and then there are usual GMC and other regulating bodies, courts and coroner's court if things go belly up. Now this is just a small slide, and then this is something which I have chosen really to illustrate, I think, one of the main issues which I think is for the healthcare in Pakistan. It is basically a problem of resources and its ill allocation. And the problem, I think, lies at various levels. One thing really is that Pakistan obviously is very low in GDP, which is probably not very surprising. There are many reasons, and I wouldn't even delve into that. But if you look at the next column, Pakistan is, even with those little resources, we are spending even a smaller proportion of those resources on healthcare. Thirdly, I don't have the stats for that, but I'm sure it's true that out of that relatively small budget, primary care gets only a smaller percentage of that budget. And lastly, I've been given to understand that tiny budget that primary care gets, that is not completely utilized either. I've been told that about 30% of the budget is unused, which is a travesty. I can't even believe it. Now, resources, I think, is a big issue. There are other issues, and that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we can't really hope to see any improvement. Having said that, primary care in NHS is considered to be the most cost-effective part of the NHS. That is the reason. There is an established principle in Britain that if any work can be shifted from secondary care to primary care, that has to be more cost-effective. If it can be done safely, and sometimes I think a bit unsafely, that is done. So it makes sense that more resources are spent on primary care, because that, if we have got a little money, then it is better spent in a place where we can get most bangs for our bucks. And my suggestions really are that we need basically GPs to be in rural areas, and we need to really have some kind of an incentive for them to be there. And my suggestion really is that GPs need to be properly trained. It is a discipline. They need to really train to work in that particular discipline. There are various ways it can be done. And what I would suggest, probably there are GPs who are already working in rural areas in private capacity. Perhaps they can be incentivized to get into a channel where they can be given a structured training which can be stately funded, and then after that they can be then given some remuneration in the form of a capitation fee, possibly, to look after certain aspects of patient's care. To start off with, a little bit like the way we do things there, and then they can be probably, their income can be supplemented further by giving them rent for their current clinics, by ensuring that they provide certain facilities in those clinics, that gives them their personal interest in that area, to live in that area. In fact, in some ways, the people who are already working in basic health units, because that model works here as well, that they can be made an independent contractor. They are not paid rent because they are already living in an accommodation which is funded by the government, or they can be given option of buying it, I suppose. But giving them a stake in that business, I think, is one way of keeping them in the area, and it has to be paid. Nothing comes cheap. And giving them rent obviously helps by giving patient, basically government less initial investment to kind of invest in there. And the other thing really is that these trained GPs should be the only ones who could refer to the secondary care. And lastly, I think government pension scheme can be offered to all those, because all of the staff is entitled for a government pension scheme as well. And I think Dr. Rahil is a very valued friend of mine, but I think I better stop it here if I want to keep that friendship alive. I will leave you with these thoughts. Thank you very much.
So now you're going to have your last speaker. So keep patient. We'll have our last speaker now.
We're glad to welcome Professor Harun Hamid, Professor of Pediatrics.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zayed. We do not, unfortunately, have our next two speakers with us today. So, the last speaker of the house, I would like to give the podium over to Mr. Asim Khan, my class fellow from
4th year MBBS here in King Edward Medical University. Now, to continue the proceedings, I would like to invite a personality who especially come from US to address us about how to decrease the neonatal mortality rates. We thank Ma'am Leah Greenspan for her precious time. We wish that she enjoys her stay in Pakistan, and we welcome her to King Edward Medical University on the behalf of our staff and faculty members. I hope her expertise will guide us in all ways possible. I will now invite her on the rostrum, Dr. Leah Greenspan.
My heart, and that's neonatal mortality. I've spent a lot of time in Africa and Asia working on improving the care of newborns. So thank you for your time, and again, thank you for having me. I wanted to introduce you to Roxy. I met Roxy 10.5 years ago on her first day of life. She was born at 33 weeks to a 40-year-old G1P1 mom with no past medical history. Mother had premature rupture of membranes, received 2 doses of betamethasone, and was delivered via C-section. Roxy's APGAR scores were 8 and 9. She was admitted into the neonatal ICU for 2 weeks, where she received IV fluids, no oxygen, no tube feedings, started feedings, and went home. Roxy is a competitive dancer. She's an excellent student, and she really loves her doll. So why am I here? I'm here to help give information to decrease the disparity of care. Where you were born should not determine your survival. Every mother, every family, every grandparent should have their chance to have their Roxy. Anyone who works in global health has seen these statistics. 2.6 million babies die in the first 28 days of life, the neonatal period, across the globe. That doesn't include the additional 2.6 million that die at stillbirth. 50% of these babies die after labor has begun. 75% of newborn deaths can be prevented with high quality care. 10 million babies a year die who do not breathe immediately at birth. The major burden of neonatal mortality exists in low-income settings where health systems' capacity to provide neonatal care and resuscitation is inadequate. Again, We got to talk about statistics because it's global health. Newborns count, or neonates count for almost half of the newborn deaths for children under 5. 80% of these deaths are preventable. The causes of neonatal mortality, the top 3. 35% of neonates die from preterm birth complications. An additional 24% die from intrapartum-related events, such as asphyxia, and 15% of deaths are attributed to sepsis. Though there's a 50% reduction in deaths of children under 5 in the Millennium Development and Sustainable Development Goals generation, newborns have not experienced a magnitude of change anywhere near this. But improving the quality of care around the time of birth saves the most lives. But this requires what? Educated, skilled, and equipped healthcare workers. Looking at country-specific neonatal mortalities where I work, in Ghana, 24 babies out of every 1,000 live births die. Uganda's a little bit better at 20 per 1,000. The US, 3.5 per 1,000. Pakistan's in red for a reason. Pakistan leads the world in the number of neonatal deaths, 42 per 1,000 live births. That's alarming to me, and that's why I'm here. If you look specifically at Pakistan and the trends in early childhood mortality rates, you see the blue line on the top. There's a 38 per 1,000 decrease in the number of deaths over this period of time since the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals. That's a pretty good improvement. But if you look at the neonatal mortality, which is the line on the bottom, it's almost flat. You see only 7 per 1,000 decrease in deaths. Where is this happening? This is happening right here in the Punjab region. You see that neonatal mortality and child mortality is greatest in this area. Patterns in perinatal mortality, which is a little different than neonatal mortality. You see 57 deaths per 1,000 pregnancies because perinatal mortality spans from 7 months pregnant through 7 days of life versus time of birth through 28 days. What's happening? In Pakistan, you have higher risks for mothers that are less than 20. You have a large population of young mothers. This also becomes, your risk for perinatal mortality increases with decreased spacing. The closer your children are, the more your risk of dying. It's higher in rural areas, and again, Punjab has the highest number of perinatal deaths as well. So what's the problem? I mentioned this before. A shortage of skilled and qualified health workers. But not only that, you have a limited workforce and limited resources. There's a paucity in specialized training courses that are specific to the newborn. There's a lack of mid-level provider. That's a midwife, neonatal nurse practitioner. So not only lack of workers, but lack of skilled workers. And we need to pay attention to the healthy timing and spacing of pregnancies, which is the new term for family planning. What's the answer? What's the solution? I'm not going to pretend and stand up here and tell you I have all the answers. It's complicated, it's multifactorial, and it's also multidisciplinary. Neonatal mortality cannot change unless we work hand in hand with our obstetrical colleagues, with our nurses, and think about a mid-level position. And where are we going with neonatal mortality? The Sustainable Development Goals, which end in 2030 and are a continuation from the Millennium Development Goals, say that we need to reduce neonatal mortality to 12 per 1,000 live births. Remember, we're starting here at 42. So that's a big, there's a lot of work to be done. What do we do to achieve these goals? We must address deficiencies in care and resources across the continuum. We cannot work in a silo. And the world needs to include its focus not just on the rural regions, but and full-term babies. We need to start thinking about critically ill and hospitalized babies, small babies, low birth weight babies. So what has the world been doing since the beginning of the Millennium Development Goal era? Well, we've designed curriculum that is specific for low resource settings. Has everyone heard about helping babies breathe? Okay. And how about essential care for newborn babies? This is a package. Helping babies breathe, essential care for newborn babies, essential care for small babies. How about helping mothers survive? Curriculum, no? Yes? No? A little bit? This is curriculum designed specifically to address the number 1 and 2 deaths for mothers, postpartum hemorrhage, and preeclampsia, eclampsia. Essential care for labor and delivery, this is coming new. Chlorhexidine, an approach for decreasing sepsis with cord care. Kangaroo mother care, you'll hear this again. We also had innovations, Holmani, bubble CPAP, specifically designed for low resource settings, Warmaloo and Embrace, thermal warming, CPAP, global health media videos, which are educational videos targeted specifically at the gap, which is nursing and midwifery, and Nest 360, which is something that's coming up, which looks at a suite of equipment designed specifically for developing countries. But back to helping mothers survive and helping babies survive. These programs are specifically designed for low resource settings in rural areas. Each one of these curriculum ends with send to advanced care. Transfer to advanced care. How do we do that? How do we get there? And how do we ensure that what we've invested for transport to advanced care actually provides what is necessary for babies to survive? Have you seen in Pakistan airline or fixed wing travel with specialized captain and crew for transporting babies? No, right? What about incubators, high-tech incubators in ambulances with ventilators and monitors? No. Okay? How about advanced care settings that have all this high-tech equipment? No. So these are what you're going to try and get your babies to do, and how your babies are going to get somewhere. This is not realistic for resource poor countries, right? It's not. But does that mean we can't save babies? We can't make change? We can't reach the Sustainable Development Goals? No, because where do you start and where do you finish? You have to think about that from the beginning. So we already know we don't have that ability. Do we just give up on babies? No. We start with low-hanging fruit. You see this guy in the chair? It's very easy for him to get that apple. It's simple. Pick things that are simple. He can have multiple apples from his seat. Look at this guy on the top of the tree. He can't get anything, and he's working really hard. Pick things that are simple to make change for the largest portion of the population. You're not going to have that specialized crew on fixed wing. You're not going to have that transport system, and you're not going to have that high-tech setting. So you want to avoid this scary picture of the fruit on the top that's going to bite you. Things that really sound cool and fun to do are not what makes change. So we want to focus on the low-hanging fruit. I worked a lot in Ghana and Uganda, and I just want to share with you what I've done to make change. I focused my approach to, you see the hands on the bottom? What does anyone think this means? Number one thing you always want to do in exactly right here, hand washing. There's no reason to go anywhere until you have hand washing and infection prevention. They're newborns. We start with hand washing, resuscitation, transport. Does this transport mechanism provide anything less than that fancy transport mechanism I showed you earlier? It actually doesn't. It's exactly the same. You have thermoregulation, oxygen, and movement. And the golden hour of care, Basics, respiratory support, temperature management, and blood sugar. They all work together, and what's in the middle? Infection prevention. When you're looking at global health and improving newborn care, or probably any type of implementation approach, you want it to be purposeful. You don't want to just come in and randomly start a project that you think is going to help. You want to know where you're going from the beginning to the end. Again, multidisciplinary. Don't start something until you really have data. Know what you're looking for, know what's going on. Know what the problems are, and you need data, you need to have your feet on the ground, and you need to do needs assessments. And it's not just pre-tests and post-tests, which a lot of places do, a lot of people do, it's observation. Make sure you identify if there's a knowledge due gap. What does that mean? Can people actually do what they say needs to be done? Do they actually have that skill? And that, what I find in developing countries, that's what's lacking. You can get 100% on exams, pre-test, post-test, but actually putting the skill into place in the clinical setting becomes the gap. Make sure you're strategic, look at a timeline. Studies have proven that large-scale trainings in beautiful hotels with fancy lunches have not changed knowledge and skill over time. What does work? Low dose, high frequency. Come often, train often, small amounts of material. If you want to memorize 100 things, do you start with 100 and then stop? No. You do about 4, you memorize, then you take a break and come back and do that. That's low dose, high frequency. That's how you see change that is sustainable. And make sure that anytime you implement a training or a program, you're monitoring and evaluating, and that is built in from the beginning and continues through the end. So we talked about infection prevention. We all were going like this when I asked you what the number one thing to do is. I saw this yesterday in Kangaroo hanging all over. I saw the sign, but did I see the action? Here, the WHO's 5 points of touch. And we start with hand washing, not just healthcare workers, but also families. You have to wash your hands before you touch the patient, anytime you're doing a procedure, after you're exposed to body fluids, after touching the patient. And this is really one that I see that really is lacking, is after touching the patient's setting. It's very important, because then you're taking whatever organism is on this patient onto the next patient's area. And antibiotic stewardship, you're going to start seeing more and more about this. I'm sure that every one of you has seen these WHO hand washing and hand rub steps. We need to do that. Okay, we're going to move along a little faster then. The second step after hand washing is a skilled resuscitation team. Tertiary care facilities should have high level of resuscitation skills through NRP, because you receive the most critical mothers, which gives you the most critical newborns. You can prevent 30% of intrapartum related deaths that way. This is my project in Uganda, where I started a designated resuscitation team, which showed a 17% reduction in newborn admissions after 2 months. But what's even more impressive to me is you see a 50% reduction in admissions after 9 months. That shows that change is sustainable over time. We have standard NRP training model, where we're doing small groups with skills, bedside training, making your champion. You see this gentleman on the right? He's in Ghana. He comes from Uganda. We trained him in Uganda, and we proved that he could train in other countries in Africa. This is actually me working on mentoring in the operating room, and you see Patrick on the right doing the same type of mentoring. We talked about transport. Transport small and sick infants between institutions in developing countries. It's complicated. We lack equipment, and we lack skilled personnel. This is what I have in the U.S. on the right. That's a lot of high-tech equipment. That's on the left, I apologize, on your left. On the right is a very similar model that I work with in China. This is what I developed in Uganda that's now working in Ghana. We start with a small cot, you add a reusable warming blanket and Neopuff, which gives you CPAP with oxygen support, no electricity, all you need is an oxygen cylinder. Not very hard to have. And here you see babies transporting with temperature management. Here we have a plastic bag. That's standard of care for newborns in the that's international guidelines. And here we have training in all our equipment. NGOs have a very big habit of providing equipment without training. That's a big flaw on our side. And look, this is working in Ghana and in Uganda. These are two different facilities giving the same temperature and respiratory support as the big machines I showed you earlier. Don't forget about this gap in nursing. Nursing must be brought up to speed and practicing standardized care for small newborns. I don't spend 23 hours a day with each newborn, but the nurses do. They actually spend 24. I spend about 5 minutes if the baby's sick. So I talked about low-hanging fruit. We want to stay focused on basics. Respiratory support, blood sugar, temperature, and infection. And here's Roxy again on the right. She's a low-hanging fruit. Moderate to late preterms are a group of babies that you can really change their lives because all they need is special care to the low-hanging fruit on the left. Temperature, blood sugar, and respiratory support. Thermal regulation, temperature management in newborns is directly related to outcomes. I want to just tell you this one statistic. There's a 28% increase in mortality, so that's a 30% increase for every 1 degree fall in temperature during admission in small babies. Admission temperature is a strong predictor of mortality. So what do you do if you don't have a thermal blanket, if you don't have an incubator? You're going to see this kangaroo multiple times. Kangaroo mother care started in Bogota, Colombia in the 80s, in the 70s, was recognized for UNICEF in the 80s. And kangaroo mother care, skin to skin, promotes effective thermal control, promotes breastfeeding, infection prevention, cardiorespiratory stabilization, and maternal bonding. Most of those things are addressed in that triangle. And here, we're introducing skin to skin in Macedonia. And the right, you see this baby, this gorgeous baby, this is skin to skin in the operating room, right after C-section. I was here yesterday and babies were separated from their mothers at C-section and taken away because the mother can't care for them. The baby is separated for 2 hours before it sees its mother. Here we're doing skin to skin in the operating room. This isn't fancy equipment. This mother is warm and ready. And we're going to have breastfeeding early so you don't get into that triangle of cold, respiratory distress, low blood sugar. This is preventative medicine. It's cheap and it's ready. Okay, it's not just for fathers. Look at these guys. Here's a dad in Uganda giving skin to his baby. I like this picture on the right. This one's actually from Maryland, where the dad is giving skin to his baby who's on respiratory support in the neonatal ICU. So that's exciting. By the way, I've been at all these locations when all these pictures were taken, if I didn't take them myself. Respiratory distress, ventilators are not the answer. Okay, ventilators are not the answer. That's that fruit on the top that you can't reach that only helps a few. CPAP is cheap. CPAP is effective, and it really is a great option for developing countries. Surfactant, it's cheaper in other countries than it is in the US. It changes lives. But it's early skin to skin, standard of care, algorithms, and training that really make the difference. Here, these are different types of CPAP that are specifically designed for developing countries. Look at the one on the right. Does that require a lot of high tech? That's just expiratory limb in bubble that gives you positive pressure. Hypoglycemia. Nurses need to know what to do doctors need to know what to do. Babies get cold, their blood sugars drop. Babies are at risk for being big, for being small, for being preterm, for being infants of a diabetic mother. Have a standard of care, policies and procedures to evoke change. People do random treatments, and it causes more of a problem. Remember, we have taken an oath to do no harm. Don't make things more complicated for yourselves and for families and babies. Early skin-to-skin and breastfeeding, this prevents hypoglycemia. So I want to talk to you for a couple more minutes about this low-hanging fruit, which is Roxy. Roxy was at 32 to 37 weeks, so she was a moderate preterm baby. But if you look in Pakistan, my statistics here, 633 babies are born that are moderate to late preterm. If you want to load them on a plane, that means 6 plane loads of babies die every year, every day, for a year. That's how you get to 633,000. So those are your moderate to late preterms. These babies have three times higher mortality rates than term infants, but they're 20 times higher mortality rate if they're small. These babies are born soon, but they're not born to die, and their deaths are utterly preventable. Transport, resuscitation, infection prevention, moderate to late preterm. If you address the needs of these simple things, you will see a movement in your neonatal mortality. Moderate to late preterms, they do have increased risks, but all of those fall on that triangle. But you think about on a global level, given these numbers, this is where you're going to get your greatest public health impact. So this is Roxy. Roxy's actually my daughter. I don't know if you figured that out. But don't deny mothers these babies that should survive. Don't deny sisters having their lives together. Focus on this group. Focus on the basics. Keep it simple. Have purpose. Build capacity with sustainability in mind. Strengthen the health system. And think about how you're going to measure this along the way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and dear students, we are now coming to the end of this participant who is presenting the topic. Another round of applause for me also for keeping the time management absolutely got on time. Timekeeping was stressful, yes, I do understand. And a round of applause for all of you for attending this session. So, Sir, it's all over to you for the concluding session.
Thank you all for joining us today in our endeavor to highlight the fundamental topic of general practice and maternal and child health care. I am extremely grateful to all our guest speakers for joining us today and coming back to their alma mater and enlightening us with their invaluable knowledge and experience. I am sure it has been an informative session for all of you guys, and I hope they all look at you guys as their role models in guiding them on the road to excellence. I thank you all once again. In the end, I would like to invite our chief guest, Dr. Rahil Siddiqui, to give shields to all our guest speakers. So, Dr. Rahil Siddiqui.
First guest is Dr. Nasir Islam Bhatti. So kindly come. Next, I would like to call Dr. Fareed Zafar. Thank you, sir. Next is Dr. Kadir Baraich. Now I'd like to call Dr. Tariq Gohar. would like to invite Dr. Leah Greenspan to receive it.
Say that there's tea and coffee, and there's a posters, a competition, and an exhibition to view downstairs, and then we reconvene at 11:30 in the main hall for the full session. Thank you.